Ladies, gentlemen, listeners, welcome to Khomaza Radio Africa, the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. That is our philosophy. We inform and entertain, we develop and educate, we empower and support, we associate and network. That is the idea. We are a business, professional management services, entrepreneurship development, 24/7 internet streaming radio station. We broadcast music and talk shows across the world. Our objective is to use the African storytelling and the Lekgotla conversation methodology in offering career coaching, education and learning guidance, continuous professional development, enterprise and entrepreneurship development, and connecting supply to demand. Our talk shows aim to affirm and support professionals and entrepreneurs in their personal and professional journey of bringing difference to the world. These are talk shows that recognize excellence and greatness. Professionals, business and entrepreneurs are invited as a recognition of the great work that they are making and contributing to humanity. This is our entrepreneurship and professional series. Our guest is the owner and manager of Life Entabeni Hospital's EEG and Epilepsy Monitoring Unit in Durban. That is French to me. Welcome, Candice Bottcher. Have I said it right?
Thank you. Yes, of course. Thank you, Sam. That's right, Candice Bottcher.
Lovely.
And I know that it's quite a mouthful of I was trying to think about a simple name for a business. There isn't. It's just what it is.
Yes. Sometimes when there is a big story from the business, you are not able to make the name your own choice. I'm sure there is a background to it. You come very highly recommended by my friend Shaquille, the Cooperative Education Director at the Durban University of Technology. I'm sure you're going to share with us where did your path meet and why does he think so highly of you. And thank you with those few words for joining us at Khomaza Radio Africa. Let's just check in. We're living in difficult times. So body, mind and spirit, how are you doing?
It's been a really challenging time because things, it feels like every day is a little different, if I'm to be honest. I draw a lot of, I'm a pathological optimist. I draw a lot of energy and optimism and just all-around drive from being in an environment where I'm able to engage with people and help them. But that includes things like body language and a lot of verbal communication, spending time in people's spaces. And although I am an introvert, I get that from my work. Now, I love my work, and for the first time in my life, I actually realized how much of that I've always known that my work fills my soul on many levels. But there's a joy that I really battled with. For the first 3 months of lockdown, my practice was closed, and I live alone. And although I've got an amazing support system with amazing friends and colleagues, there's just something about being involved with helping people and helping them helping be part of their story in terms of their lives being changed and just being around the kids. I mean, it's just a beautiful energy.
Wow.
So I think really, I think that for me, I really miss my work. Obviously, I miss my family, I miss my friends, and so I've only been back for 4 weeks now. So it's just the beginning phases, and there's so many limitations to what I can do at work. My support staff cannot be there, so I'm working with a nurse, and the patients are there, and that's important. But I think when your foundation is based on things that go beyond what you see, feel, and touch, I think that ultimately you know that this will pass. And I'm still able to do my work, and I'm still able to connect with friends like this. I've had suppers like this, we've had meetings like this, so it's been wonderful. But I definitely can feel my serotonin is a bit low, and my feel-good chemicals need some tapping up, but that will come. And it's been a wonderful reflection to be able to see how important that actually is to me.
Beautiful.
Long feedback for
wonderful. That's great to hear somebody that loves what they do. And I always say that either your work find you or you find your work. and
my work found me.
Yeah, which then makes it your life purpose. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think people who haven't really experienced that, there are small and big things within my working process and in my life. They find me, and when they find me, I'm not saying there's no skill or life experience that allows you to be able to know it when you see it, but having a bit of faith and trust that when it comes, you will recognize it. But I've been just so, I've been blessed beyond reason to have these things come to me, and certainly not easy. None of it has been easy, but I certainly didn't go looking for this work. I didn't even know it existed when I found it, or when it found me.
Yeah.
So I marvel every single day, and I pray that the day never comes where I go to work and I think, I really don't want to be here today. It hasn't happened yet, and so I just trust that I look after that feeling and that thing.
Yes. I always say that when your life purpose and you collide, only you can really explain to yourself how it feels. The second person or the third person will not know what it feels unless they themselves have come into contact with their life purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have noticed though on occasion when I start to speak about it, I can understand that there's a light that kind of comes on inside of you, and some people are very sensitive and perceptive to that.
Yes.
And they see it, and I've almost seen some people be surprised that they see that light and that energy that you radiate, I guess, when you're speaking about something that you love so deeply. And it's multifaceted love. This is not just about any one thing. And so I suppose that's as close as I've come, but you're so right. Unless you feel it, and you won't really know it.
Yeah. But beautiful.
I'm very good.
So let's, just for the benefit of the listeners, let's just start with your very much beginning, the early childhood, which is the most important part of this conversation at Comeza Radio Africa, is for people to know you for who you are, not what you have acquired over years. So, and that starts with your early childhood, because that is the first 10 years of our lives, really set the foundation. We are born and we become our parents' projects until we take over from them when we are 20-something, 21, 18, and we say that, now I'm in charge. But the early years is dependent on them how they parent you, where they send you, where you grow up. You know, in African culture, we talk about that it takes a village to bring up the child. So where did it all happen? Where were you born, and what did you grow up doing? Do you have siblings? Are the parents still alive? Basically, who are the Bottchers? You know, tell us.
I must tell you, I really enjoyed reading. Just having an idea of when Michael was chatting to me a little bit about the kind of background thinking that I got to explore, and I just love that a personal journey that you've come from. That is your story. Don't often get to tell it.
Yes.
And I think you tell it when people. You tell it to people who really want to hear, because these are not pearls that you just throw around.
Yes.
So when people really want to know and they really see you, these are beautiful things to be able to talk about. So really, I come from a tiny little town in what is now known as Western Gauteng.
Yes.
It's called Carletonville. It's a mining town, but in fact, I actually grew up in a little village just outside of that. My dad was a miner. He was an electrician on a mine and on a gold mine, and so we grew up in a blue-collar environment. And I was surrounded by kids who came from a lot of immigrant families who came to do mining from all over the place, from out of the country and from within the country, because it draws, it's a place where you can get good money with hard work. And my mother was a hairdresser.
Oh, yes.
And we come from very humble beginnings. I was the only person in my family, even my cousins, to be able to study and get a degree. And it's been an incredible opportunity, because when I look back, the schooling I had, it was simple, but it was good. And I think that from an early age I was curious. I've always been curious. I'm still curious about everything. I've got this insatiable curiosity, and I loved gadgets. I'm the oldest of 3 children. My younger sister, who is the middle, she's no longer with us, but I have a younger brother.
Has she passed on?
Sorry?
The sister, has she passed on?
My sister passed away 2 years ago, yes.
What happened?
She passed away. My sister actually passed away in her sleep. She wasn't well. My sister actually suffered with a mental disorder.
Yes.
From a young age. She was actually schizophrenic. I mean, that's me being really vulnerable, because that's a really difficult thing for families to experience.
Yes.
But she managed to get treatment in her 30s, and when she finally did get good treatment, which, by the way, was government hospitals, I couldn't have paid all the money in the world to get the most amazing treatment that she did. But she had to be on some really complicated meds, and I think she had flu one day, and she also had to take some antibiotics, and I think they conflicted. And she went to sleep one morning and she just didn't wake up.
Oh, man.
So she was my little sister. My parents had since passed away, and she was like my baby. I don't have children.
Yes.
And so that is a big heart sore for me, because my purpose was to make sure that she was always taken care of. But she died, she was happy. It's the happiest dad I've ever been.
That's good. That's good to know.
We stayed in contact, and Shaquille knew her from a young age, so So we grew up, our siblings were very close. I mean, my mom had 3 kids in the space of 7 years. And I think that, growing up in a small mining town, there's not much to do.
But do you still have some of the early childhood school friends that in your contact list that you went to?
Absolutely, and it's quite amazing because despite the fact that we all grew up in similar economic backgrounds, many of the people who were certainly in my matric class, in fact, most of us were in school together from grade 1 all the way to what is now known as grade 12.
Yeah.
Many of them are doctors, lawyers, physicians, accountants. And although I'm not in close contact with many of them, we certainly stay in contact via Facebook, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to see how they've done. But it's also really wonderful to remember where we've come from. And for them, even just a simple thing like, putting their school name on their profile, on their LinkedIn profile or their Facebook profile.
Yeah.
These are tiny little specks, but we've had people from there who have made a difference in the world, who literally have made a difference in the world. And I think that, for me, when you reflect on that, and you can't really, I suppose the smaller the space is that you've come from, when you look back, if you can recognize it, and you really look at it, you can appreciate how amazing it was despite the fact that it was so small. At the time, it was not easy to grow up in a space like that, especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
So, if you love books and you love studying and you love sport, perfect. And I was very blessed for that.
Will you say that
have a problem.
there is a certain culture that mining towns have that actually shape the people that, especially the children that grow up in such towns? And what will that be if you were to describe it?
So one of the most defining things for me, what happens is that the majority of certainly when I was growing up, the majority of kids and their families lived on what was called mining villages. And everything was paid for you. So you lived in a home that was paid for by the mining company. We never paid for electricity, we never paid rent, we never paid for telephones, we never paid for garden services, we never paid for doctors, or there were swimming pools, there was tennis courts, every kind of sport you could imagine. And what happens in that type of environment is that your parents cannot teach you to budget.
There is abundance.
Well, there's not. I can't say that there's not. Depending on what qualification you have or what position you have on the mine, because there were like the.
So there are various categories depending on the. So there are various categories depending on the roles that your parents are playing in.
And they separated us. So the supervisors and the guys who were the overseers lived in the adjacent village.
Yeah. With
the bigger gardens and the nicer homes. But you just have to laugh. But the point is that I think one of the most difficult things is that you don't learn, your parents don't learn how to deal with things like mortgages or bonds, or there's not that much money. So it was not something that I think my parents could ever have taught me, because when they left a little early, and they took an early retirement, and they tried to buy their own home and try to get settled, but they never got it right because they had never paid a bond. They didn't understand. I don't think they understand what rates and taxes were.
Wow.
What it was like to pay electricity and water. And I saw that when I tried to help them to manage it. So growing up in a small environment was beautiful, though. It was very protected. It was very safe. We could run in the veld, in the bush. I rode bicycles, motorbikes. We could go to places that you'd be running in the rain, in the sluices, playing in the field. It was just crazy. I had a wonderful life in that respect. So it was very, very free.
That's beautiful.
So in a lot of ways.
And tell me, did you complete your grade 12 also in Carltonville, or did you have to go away?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And what was the name of the school that you did your grade 12 at?
It's called Carlton Jones High School.
Carlton Jones.
So Carlton Jones High School, and it's still there. I actually haven't made contact with them. I haven't been in touch with them, and this pending interview has actually made me think about that and wonder how it is that I could go about doing it.
It will be a beautiful homecoming, I'm sure. Will you still be able to identify the house that you grew up in?
Oh, absolutely. I went onto Google Maps about 2 years ago.
Yes.
And I went and I took snapshots. I went actually onto Google Earth so that I could get a beautiful view of, I showed my friends how the route I used to walk to catch the bus, and I lived in this home, and that's where my school was, and this is where I used to work in that restaurant. So I have a vivid memory of it. I mean, I lived there, from when I was born. I stayed in the same place, in the same space. But as soon as I left school, I left immediately to come to KZN. But
well, I'm glad that we are challenging you with this interview to go back and visit that school and say, this is part of my history and I'm coming back to pay a visit. Even maybe give some motivational talks, and why not? And you might end up adopting the school, to contribute to the ones that come after you. And that's what we are encouraging.
I suppose. Thank you so much, and thank you for that, because I think that I just never thought like that. I realized that, and it's also part of lockdown and this pandemic. I realized how there's just some places that my mind doesn't go. And although I do a lot of teaching and I do a lot of talks, that is not something that I've put into the box.
Yeah,
and I'm
beautiful.
glad that you've done that.
And you did with subjects in grade 12, and when you were doing those subjects, were they informed by a particular career direction, or was it just they were just given to you because they were available at schools? Which were those subjects?
So I did the math, science, biology. I went into I always wanted to do something in medicine. I was really, really fortunate to be part of a program at Potchefstroom University from a very young age. I must have been about 11.
Yes.
Where every week, a small group of us were selected, and we went to the University of Potchefstroom University, and we got to learn stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily learn at school. So you could choose the different types of subjects that you were exposed to, and so I chose what was called informatics, which is now computer programming and computer modeling. So I got to be exposed to computers and to computer programming in the mid-80s, 1985. And so I had that background of computers. With my dad being an electrician, I've always been involved with, he always let me play with these tools, take things apart. I loved gadgets. I loved building things. And then with my biology and the sciences, I love the sciences. I love maths. So I always had this idea that I would go into something to do with medicine.
Yeah.
But you know that when I left school, I was not equipped. I realized then I was not equipped to decide. I thought I was, but I realized now I was not equipped to decide. I was 17, I just turned 17, and here I was trying to make a decision that's something that would affect me for the rest of my life, what I thought at the time.
So which university did you go to?
Well, what I actually did was we had some financial issues. So I thought what I would do is I first went to Natal Technikon. I did a national diploma in medical technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would use it as a stepping stone to get to my BSc. My parents were not able to finance my studies, and so it was the plan. Well, I have to tell you, after not barely a year, I realized there was no ways I was staying in a lab for the rest of my life. So you know what happened? My parents really blessed me with the ability to take some time out, a year, and decide what I wanted to do. Don't get me wrong, I had 3 jobs at any one time, so I worked really hard. But that is where Shaquille Ori enters my story.
I see. So that is so you went to Natal Technikon then, which is now Durban University of Technology, yeah? And then you did this, and then you say you took a break. What kind of a break was that?
I went to Bible college for a year.
Yes.
So
is that after the diploma?
I didn't complete the diploma. I only did it for 1 year, and after 1 year, I realized that was not what I was going to be doing.
I see.
And it was very hard for me because I've always been a perfectionist. Studying was very easy for me. My marks were always good with very little work.
Yeah.
Very humbling for me. Very humbling. And I had to learn how to learn. And I realized that. And without the passion and the drive of wanting to do that profession, I had to stop and reflect. And so I was able to pay for my own tuition in Bible college. It's just a 1 year full-time certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I waitressed and I did part-time jobs. And then at the end of that year, that hunger started to come back. And I was starting to watch a lot of these forensic type of TV programs. And I figured, maybe it wouldn't be so bad going back and doing medical technology, but doing it on the slant of doing forensic pathology. So I made a couple of inquiries, and really the long and the short of it is that in a very roundabout way, I came in contact with Shaquille Ori.
Yes.
By accident. When you're going into that office to speak to that person, who was the completely wrong person, because if I had done what he had told me, it would not have been a good idea. And I came out and ended up in the foyer, and he asked me a question, and we got chatting. And so what happened was he got me to be able to learn a little bit about the current course the degree that I then subsequently did. And he said, look, I know you know nothing about this. I had no clue. He might as well have been speaking about purple elephants. And it was completely foreign to me. So he said, just I'll tell you what, why don't I'll organize that you come and spend a little bit of time, even if it's a couple of hours or a couple of days at a couple of the facilities, so different hospitals or whatever, and then you tell me what you think. And needless to say, I got in. I got into that course, and he was my anatomy and physiology lecturer.
And what was the course called?
Clinical technology. It was called clinical technology. So what you had to do was you did this baseline diploma, I suppose, this baseline diploma, and then you would then choose a speciality, a field speciality, whether you go into cardiac or the brain or renal, or there was a whole lot of organ systems you could choose from. And so I was with Shaquille Ori when I did my baseline theory stuff before I did my prac and my ComServe.
And that was at the Natal Technicum.
So it was their rivals, you see. It was ML Sultan Technicum.
I see.
Before they joined forces.
Yes.
Before they joined forces.
Yeah.
So, because they didn't have this anywhere else. They didn't have it available at any other facility that I knew of, even in the country. So they chose they selected a small class, a really small class. I think there must have been 15 of us. And I was just fortunate enough to be selected. And I remember in the selection panel, Shaquille sat there, and they asked me a question. Afterwards, I asked him, I said to him, what was it that made them choose me? Because there I am, this little blonde girl sitting there. I probably didn't look like I knew what I was doing. He said, do you remember they asked you? So one of the part-time jobs I had, I worked in an electronics shop.
Yes.
And I would help with components. I could change a plug with my eyes closed. I could put up an aerial for a TV, because back then we had aerials. And so, he said it was that.
Wow.
It was the fact that you could climb up onto a roof and fix someone's aerial and do that without an eyelid. Well, I only found that out years later, but subsequently I got into the job. I got a position in the course, and Shaquille was my anatomy and physiology lecturer, and I loved it. It was a completely different learning experience. I mean, I thought that I enjoyed school. This was next level.
It sounds like that was that point that you came into contact with your life calling, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I literally used to get excited for exams. I would be so. It's ridiculous now that I think about it, but I'd get so excited because there was no doubt. Because I had studied and I'd worked, and by the time I did this diploma, this degree, I probably was already, I'd probably been around for about 3 years out of school. So I considered myself a mature student.
Yeah.
I knew what it was to hold down a load of jobs and to work full time and have lots of responsibilities. So I studied really, really hard. I made sure that I didn't have to study on weekends, and I managed my time really, really well. You
must have completed it in record time.
Well, I completed it. I can't say that I completed it sooner, but I certainly did get much better marks than I ever thought that I would. And it was funny because it was never about the marks. It was about this challenge to see if I could get what I knew in here onto the paper. Because for the first time I fully understood it. It was not. I used to learn. There's one way that they used to teach us. I think they used to teach us so that we regurgitated what they taught, what we learned. This was the first time that I understood almost on a molecular level, the physics and the chemistry and especially the anatomy and physiology and pathology of the organ systems. I understood how it worked. So it was no longer theory that I was regurgitating. It was something that I was immersing myself in. And it was a completely new experience. So
I always say that it's amazing how specialists know our bodies than we do ourselves. Now I can imagine that feels like real empowerment.
Absolutely. No,
and so it took you how long to finish it?
Well, to finish this degree, it actually took me 5 years in total. That's including my ComServe. And I then did a subspeciality of what's now neurophysiology, which is the work that I do now. So that total took me 5 years, yes. So
wow.
From the time I saw him at his door.
It's amazing how God put us at the right places, at the right times to meet the right people, and then it becomes a life-changing moment for us.
Absolutely.
And since then you stayed in contact with Shaquille as your mentor, right?
absolutely. I mean, Shaquille is one of these phenomenal people who, one day we were having coffee, and he said we had a question. He asked me a question, and I said something about a meeting he was going to, and he said he was going to Cape Town, and I said, no, I've never been to Cape Town before, and I was very involved with I enjoyed student leadership. He said, I've got this meeting that I'm going to, why don't you come with me? You can be the student rep.
Yeah.
And so I was the rep within my class, but I certainly, within my class at the time, but I certainly hadn't, I was involved with curriculum stuff and development stuff, but always from a student input point of view. And I always did it just because I enjoyed it. I never thought of it as a thing that I would ever put on my CV.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I'm on this airplane, my very first trip to Cape Town, and it was my very first board meeting. I sat in this room with all of these people and Shaquille. And, when I came back, I could not believe what I had experienced. It was just a phenomenal experience. And since then, I've sat on boards and committees and interviews, and it's just been, and Shaquille, it's like he just drops these little pebbles that I can just pick up. He nudges me, and he's got that skill, you see. He's got this incredible ability to be able to see things in you that you don't even see in yourself, and just nurture them. It's a little seed that he just waters, and he just goes, what about this? And you've never thought of it. And as long as you take it when they offer it, and then you hold on to their support, and then they know when to let go, and you carry on.
Wow.
It's a book I could write all on my own. He's been phenomenal that way, and so he's been part of my life ever since, and I think that's probably, 25, 30 years.
Wow. And Candice, so since you went down to Durban for your studies, you then, I don't know whether you adopted Durban or Durban adopted you. You are now a Durbanite.
Yeah, Durban definitely adopted me. I love Durban. I love the way that this place makes me feel. I travel a lot overseas, and every single time I come back, I certainly love South Africa more, but I love Durban more. And, there's just something about the energy of the space. I love the pace, but I just love the Durban people. I love the Durban people. And
you must have fallen in love with the sea.
That was a big thing for me, especially coming from Carletonville. I love the water. I love it. So I stay 10 minutes away from the beach, and I'm very blessed to have been able to do a lot of different water sports and that. But Durban was my home, and I've been offered work in Cape Town and in Joburg at times when I probably could have made 3 times the money that I was making at the time, and I couldn't even imagine myself not living there, but just not being here. And obviously those doors may open at some point, but it's not something that's in my frame of imagination. So
tell me, do we have enough of you guys in this profession in South Africa?
I don't think so. So what happens is that once you've done your baseline degree and you choose your speciality, certain groups of the specialities there are a lot of. So it's just like medicine. Certain specialities will have many specialists in that field. In my field, I think there are definitely not enough of us. And then within our field, we then super specialize, and that is sorely lacking. So if you've already got a small pool, who, when trying to work and trying to grapple things like spreading yourself too thin, you don't manage, you generalize and you don't manage to specialize. then you don't have time to specialize, because specializing takes time and it takes money. And I was fortunate enough to specialize very, very early. And I don't think I have anybody else in South Africa who does what I do.
What do we call your specialization again?
I'm a neurophysiologist.
Neurophysiologist.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong, there are a good handful of neurophysiologists in South Africa.
Yes.
But they may have gone into different specialities. They play different roles. But in the speciality that I've chosen, in fact, when I started doing this, it was not available in South Africa at all. I had to go overseas and do an observership there to learn what I do now.
Is it? And where did you go?
It's very lonely.
Where did you go?
I went to the US. I went to Seattle.
Yes.
In Washington.
Yes.
There's 3 facilities. So there are actually 4 hospitals in Seattle that have got facilities like mine, just in that one city.
Yes.
And one is an entire hospital dedicated just to children. So I went and I spent time there, rotating between the university hospital and the children's hospital. And I wasn't allowed to touch or treat any of the patients, but I was allowed to watch what they did. So I had to learn everything from the role of the nurse to the role of the admin people to the role of the neurophysiologists, the techs, and the clinicians. Then try and formulate a system and bring that back and implement it when I got back to South Africa.
And what is the name of that hospital?
In Seattle?
Yes.
Harborview Medical Center. It's linked directly to the University of Seattle, Washington. So it's Harborview Medical Center, and it's incredible. There's some people at the forefront of epilepsy surgery who come from there.
And is it a public hospital or is it a private hospital?
No, it's a public hospital. There's only one private hospital in Seattle, and I wasn't allowed to visit that. I went there for coffee. That was as close as I came.
Yeah.
But they were all government type. I can't remember, like an NHS type setup in there. So definitely was. They're academic hospitals, so everybody's employed by either the university, through the government.
And when one does such specialization, it is basically done at the practical place. You're not doing it together with a university work. We often hear that the medical people, they go and do specialization. As a layman or laywoman, you think that they are registering at an institution and then they are posted to a hospital. So there is academic work and then there is a practical work. Or how is it? Just out of interest.
No, so just like with medicine, you'll have your 5 years at medical school and then you'll go out and you'll do your community service and be exposed to all of the fields. With us, we do a baseline theory of a couple of years, and then when you choose your speciality, you then go out. So you choose your speciality, and then when you're doing your community service, you receive lectures there, and you receive practical teaching there. You do maintain a connection in, I think it's in your 3rd and your 4th year with the university, where there are certain types of exams, I think, and projects and whatnot. But by the time you get to your 4th and 5th year, you mostly do things like proficiency exams and learning about and being assessed in terms of your practical ability. So I actually have a 4th year student with me now for the first time in the 22 years that I've been working, and I'm teaching her some of the work that I do because there's nobody else who does what I do. So it's been quite fascinating for me to try and find a balance between teaching her the theory and teaching her the practical. And I find that by teaching her the practical, I am actually teaching her the theory.
I see.
But that happens while you're working. But all under supervision. So she doesn't touch the patient or do any analysis without me there.
I see. Beautiful. If I'm a grade 12 learner, and I hear you talking like this, and I'm motivated to follow on your footsteps, what must I make sure that I have in my grade 12 subjects, and how do I go about locating a course like this, and which are the universities currently that are offering this course in South Africa?
So there's a couple of ways of doing this, but they have to culminate at the moment in the universities of technology. So you could start off with your BSc,
yes,
and then do, I think, maybe 2 years of prac. My student did a degree in physiology at the University of Pretoria, and she's just done 2 years of ComServe at Albert Luthuli Hospital. But her support in terms of academic is TUT.
Yes.
Which is the Technicon. I don't know what it, the
Tshwane University of Technology.
Yes, that place. Okay. Sorry, I do apologize.
Yes.
So you can do your baseline in a couple of ways, but your ComServe has to be through one of the universities of technology, and you can do it in Cape Town, Pretoria, and here with us.
I see.
As far as I know, I don't know of any other facilities.
Yeah.
And the subjects you need, a big plus in my opinion is physics. So you want the. I'm not familiar with the matric subjects at the moment, but the equivalent of the sciences. So you want biology and you want chemistry and physics. I don't know if they separate the two. Physics is very, very important. I've had a couple of people who have studied and who didn't do physics, and they had to do a bridging course of physics. But we do a lot of biophysics in our work. So physics, chemistry, maths, biology. And if you can be computer literate, because this is a highly technical job, I do my own repairs on my computers, I can do my own programming. You want to be able to be as computer literate as possible.
Yes.
In my opinion, that's one of the biggest shortfalls in the current students that I am coming across.
Yeah. And am I right to say where you are now, you are remaining a specialist at the highest complex level, but you have taken a step further and you have established your own hospital, which then makes you an entrepreneur, right?
Well, it's a practice within a hospital. So what I do is I have got a unit within Life Entabeni Hospital. I've got a small section of it. Yeah. So it's not actually the hospital. I had a little giggle at that when I spoke to Michael, but it's a unit, it's a section of the hospital.
Yes.
That is under. So when I first started, this was a brand new concept in South Africa. It had never been done, and the equipment is very, very expensive. So that hospital was owned by another company, by Aprox. And what the hospital did was they were incredible. They actually bought the equipment for us, and then we had an arrangement of being able to work together to build the units. And I think that's where the name stuck, Entabeni Epilepsy Monitoring Unit. I don't only do that. There are 1 or 2 other highly specialized tests that I do, but they're very, very rare and they're unique. But essentially, I just follow that name because the equipment is so expensive and rare. Everybody has to come to me to do it. It's not like I have a need to go to another facility.
Yeah.
So the patients come to me from all over the province, perhaps Eastern Cape or.
But do you function at your own invoice?
Yes, I practice myself as a sole proprietor, completely independently of anyone else.
Hence I said that you are an entrepreneur, but I understand it is contained. So you're offering the service to the hospital, or
Yes,
you are
to-
operative? Yeah.
The service has to be, because of the way that, because of the kind of work I do, patients have to be admitted. The majority of the patients have to be admitted, and they need high-level nursing care, very unique nursing care.
Yes.
And they put in often in quite vulnerable situations in the hospital, so they need one-to-one nursing care, and so this has to be within the confines of a hospital. It can never be done in a practice, at a medical center or something like that. We need an ICU. We need a critical care. We need support staff all around us, and I treat both pediatrics all the way up to and adults. So I see the whole range of ages, and those all need little specialities of support. It's a very multidisciplinary support structure that you build together over time. I've got a beautiful, beautiful team of people who I work with,
Wonderful.
And that thing just develops, it grows, it develops over time.
Beautiful.
It has to be in a big space like that.
Beautiful. Let's hold it there. When we come back, I would like the next episode just to focus at what you are currently doing and what kind of patients do you receive, where do you get this joy, and how do you sustain yourself, and a little bit about the other related work that you might be doing, just to really unpack your current professional life. And I'm looking at your profile. I could easily read it, but I think when you are telling it, it will make sense to the listeners, right?